Some interviews begin quietly. Some begin the way earthquakes do, silent on the surface, but carrying a deep, simmering pressure that everyone can feel before the first real shift. On this particular day, Meghan Markle was that pressure. She walked onto the set with a poised elegance, but her eyes carried a polished steeliness that suggested she had come prepared for battle. Diane greeted her with the seasoned calm of someone who had spent a lifetime navigating storms with a steady smile. "Meghan, thank you for being here," she said warmly. Meghan returned the smile. But it was the kind one gives when far more is going on beneath the surface, soft around the edges, but hard in the center. Diane leaned in slightly, her posture open, professional, inviting. "People have seen the headlines," she said gently, "but today they get to hear your voice. So let me begin with something simple. How are you? How is life these days?" A harmless question, at least it should have been. Meghan crossed one leg over the other, straightened her spine, and released a slow, deliberate breath. "Life is demanding," she replied. "When you live under constant judgment, you learn to survive in spite of it. People forget that I carry the weight of everyone's expectations every single day." Her words weren't so much an answer as they were an announcement, delivered with the precision of someone accustomed to defending herself before the attack even arrives. Diane nodded politely, but a faint flicker crossed her eyes. A quiet acknowledgement. "This is where we're going." "And how is Harry?" she asked softly. "Many admire the way you've supported one another through everything." The briefest moment, Meghan's expression tightened. A tiny shift, but noticeable. "He's fine," she said. "But let's be clear, he's not my shield. People love turning me into his side story, as if I only exist through him. But I'm the one who has faced more hostility than anyone." A murmur rippled through the audience, soft, uneasy, almost involuntary. Meghan didn't seem to notice. Or perhaps she noticed perfectly and simply didn't care. Diane's voice remained measured, an anchor attempting to hold the conversation in place. "People look at your marriage as a partnership." Meghan let out a small laugh, light in sound, cold in tone. "A partnership? Sure. But the world loves defining me through him. It's insulting, honestly." The tension in the room tightened, subtle but unmistakable. The air itself seemed to shift. Diane took a careful breath and redirected. "Let me shift a little. You've spoken beautifully about motherhood before. How has it changed you?" This time, Meghan's eyes narrowed just slightly, but the temperature of the room seemed to drop with the movement. "Changed me," she repeated. "That assumes I needed changing. I've always known who I am. Motherhood doesn't define me. I define myself." The studio fell still. Even the camera operators exchanged wary glances. Meghan wasn't simply defensive. She was bracing for a fight. The shift in energy was no longer subtle, it was unfolding in real time, like a curtain being pulled back to reveal the true stage beneath. Diane kept her composure, but the atmosphere had undeniably altered. The warmth in the room was gone, replaced by a thin thread of pressure stretched between the two women. With the precision of someone who had spent decades navigating volatile interviews, Diane leaned forward. "Let's talk about your journey with the royal family," she said gently. "When you look back, what do you feel now?" It was a soft question, but Meghan's reaction was anything but. Her jaw tightened, her shoulders squared, and her voice dropped into a colder, harder register. "Honestly, every time I'm asked about them, it isn't curiosity's judgment. People pretend they want answers, but really they're just waiting to twist them. I don't owe anyone anything about an institution built on tradition at the cost of individuality." The words landed like a blade sharp, deliberate. A wave of whispers spread through the audience. Meghan didn't blink. Diane's smile thinned by the smallest degree, but she pushed forward. "You've spoken before about the challenges," she said. "But some would argue that the visibility you gained brought opportunities to amplify your causes." Meghan let out a brittle laugh. "Opportunities? Let's call them what they were. Chains. People frame it like privilege. For me, it was pressure, endless performance. A role written long before I arrived." The audience shifted again, divided between sympathy and discomfort. Diane absorbed the answer without visible reaction. But everyone in the room understood the storm had fully arrived. Her professionalism remained intact. But the air around Diane carried a new sharpness, quiet. Acknowledgement that the interview had shifted into dangerous territory. Still, her voice stayed even as she continued. I understand your perspective. But others might say that the visibility you gained helped elevate your advocacy work, women's rights, mental health awareness, racial equality. Do you feel that platform made any difference? Meghan tilted her head, faint spark of amusement or mockery touching the corners of her mouth. I didn't need a palace to care about women's rights, she said coolly. I didn't need a title to talk about mental health. People forget that I had a voice long before any of them knew my name. She paused, then added with unmistakable disdain. The idea that I should be grateful for being tolerated is ridiculous. This time, the room didn't just shift. It dropped. The air thickened with a cold, heavy tension. Even the control room, usually buzzing with quiet instructions, froze behind its glass wall. It was the kind of silence that made people instinctively hold their breath. Diane inhaled slowly and adjusted the papers in her hands. A tiny movement, but one that revealed everything. She wasn't conducting an interview anymore. She was navigating a storm. Meghan, she said, voice still gentle, but firmer now. Visibility is powerful. Whether intended or not, being part of the monarchy brought your voice to a global audience. Some believe that's worth acknowledging. Meghan's eyes sharpened, her posture stiffening. Elevated by whose standards? She said. My work mattered long before that family ever entered the picture. Her tone was icy, the message unmistakable. Meghan wasn't giving an inch. And Diane Sawyer was running out of gentle pathways to ask difficult questions. By now the room felt different, almost electric. The energy wasn't merely tense, it was volatile. Every answer from Meghan added heat. Every question from Diane added pressure. The audience could feel those two forces colliding in real time, building towards something neither woman seemed willing to ease. Diane straightened slightly, folding her hands together. The calm was still present, but it carried a firmer backbone now. Your Netflix series was extremely successful, she said. There have been rumors that you requested a larger budget and more creative control for the next season. Can you comment on that? Meghan raised her eyebrows, a small smirk curving her lips. Rumors, that's your word, not mine. But let me be clear, when you're reshaping narratives, you don't ask for permission. You set the terms. Quality comes at a price, and my perspective isn't discounted. A few members of the audience gasped softly. The tone had shifted again, sharper, more confrontational. Diane kept her voice light, almost soothing. Some critics have called those demands difficult, she said. Meghan leaned forward, eyes narrowing with a quiet intensity. Funny how women with standards are labeled difficult, she replied, while men with the exact same standards are praised as leaders. Don't you find that interesting, Diane? There it was, another shift, another tightening of the invisible thread stretched between them. Diane nodded slowly, choosing her next words with meticulous care. That's a fair point, she said. But let me ask, do you think some of the backlash comes from the public feeling a disconnect? Statements about wanting privacy paired with very public projects and appearances? It creates questions. The air snapped just slightly, but enough to be felt. Meghan's smile disappeared instantly. Perception is a lazy word, she said flatly. People believe whatever the tabloids tell them. Privacy doesn't mean silence. It means I choose what to share, when to share it, and how to share it. That's called boundaries, and I've earned them.
Oh.
Her tone wasn't defensive anymore. It was confrontational, controlled, pointed, and unmistakably final. The studio fell completely still. In the control room, a producer whispered urgently, "Should we cut to a break?" Another shook his head, eyes glued to the monitor. "No," he said. "Diane's got this." And in that breathless, suspended moment, everyone knew they were watching a conversation that had turned into a collision. Diane took a slow, steady breath, her composure stretched thin but still intact. She wasn't rattled yet, but the strain showed in the subtle tightening of her jaw. "Let's revisit something," she said carefully. "When you think about your time in the royal family, what do you feel now? Anger, sadness, relief?" Meghan leaned back, crossing her arms. It wasn't a casual gesture, it was armor. A barrier planted firmly between herself and the world. I feel nothing, she said. They're irrelevant to me. I don't wake up thinking about them. I've moved on. It's the media that can't let go. A wave of shock washed through the audience. People exchanged wide-eyed glances, as if they'd just witnessed a glass crack under pressure. Diane blinked once, then again, slower this time, absorbing the bluntness of the answer. You don't think the monarchy remains relevant in any way? She asked, her voice still steady. Meghan let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. Relevant to who? She said. People clinging to fairy tales, Diane. It's a museum piece. And I refuse to live my life as someone else's exhibit. The arrogance in her tone filled the room like static quiet buzzing, suffocating. Something flickered in Diane's expression. A tiny spark. The warning sign before a storm breaks. She set her pen down gently, too gently. You've built a brand on speaking your truth, she said, her voice low, precise. But truth also requires humility. Do you see how your answers might come across differently than you intend? For the first time, Meghan paused. Just half a heartbeat, but it was there. A crack in the wall. Then her smirk returned, colder than before. People demand humility only from those who dare to stand tall, she said. I've bowed enough in my life. I won't do it here. The room exhaled all at once. A collective gasp, a stunned breath, a realization that something irreversible had happened. The atmosphere had crossed a line, one that neither woman seemed willing to retreat from. Diane Sawyer, famous for her grace under pressure, felt the crack. A hairline fracture barely visible, but impossible to ignore. And the audience sensed it too. The interview was no longer an interview. It was something sharper, something raw. Two storms edging closer to collision. The silence that followed wasn't ordinary silence. It was charged, electric, the kind that forms in the split second before thunder tears open the sky. Meghan remained seated with her chin lifted, arms crossed, radiating a confidence that to some looked like triumph and to others, provocation. She no longer looked like a guest. She looked like someone daring the room to challenge her. Diane didn't move. She sat perfectly still, not frozen, not shaken, just still. The kind of stillness that comes before something breaks or breaks open. She lifted her notes and adjusted them one final time, an action so small yet felt like a shift in gravity. Let's talk about something personal, Diane said quietly. The politeness remained, but the softness was gone. Her tone had hardened into something sharper, more incisive. Your husband, Prince Harry, many people see him as central to your journey. How would you describe your relationship today, considering everything you've faced together? Meghan smirked. Not a smile, a smirk edged with disdain. Harry and I don't need to prove anything to anyone, she said. Our marriage isn't a storyline for public entertainment, no matter how much interviewers want a headline. It's insulting you even framed it that way. Gasps rippled through the audience. One woman in the front row covered her mouth. Another whispered, "Oh my God," unable to look away. Diane didn't flinch, though her jaw tightened just slightly, almost imperceptibly. I meant no disrespect, she said, voice steady. People admire the unity you both present, and they're curious how you maintain that strength. Curiosity is entitlement, Meghan snapped. People confuse the two. Our private life isn't here to entertain anyone. Her words hit the room like a slap clean, sharp and final. And for a moment, the only thing louder than the silence was its meaning. Not your viewers, not the press, not anyone. The words hung in the air like frost. The studio temperature seemed to drop instantly, a coldness settling over the room despite the bright, unforgiving lights overhead. Diane inhaled slowly. It's a kind of careful breath taken by someone whose patience was being shaved away, thin slice by thin slice. All right. Shifting her tone as though trying to warm an atmosphere that no longer wished to be warmed. Let me ask about your children. You've often spoken about wanting to protect them from the pressures you faced growing up. How do you balance that, given how public your work still remains? Meghan laughed. Not a warm laugh, not a gentle one. It was sharp, brittle, an icy edge, slicing through every attempt at calm. Balance, she repeated. People love using that word when they don't understand my life. My children are protected because I say they're protected. And no, Diane, I don't owe the public photos, details, or stories. They're my children, not someone else's entertainment. A ripple of discomfort moved through the audience, a wave of subtle shifting and tightened jaws. The camera operators exchanged uneasy looks, silently checking to see if anyone else felt the tension crackling across the room. In the control room, a producer whispered under their breath, "This is getting bad." Still, Diane pushed forward, though her voice had acquired a slight tension beneath its practiced steadiness. "I was only asking because many parents watching relate to the challenges," she said. "Viewers don't deserve every piece of me." Meghan snapped back before she had finished. "And if what I choose to share isn't enough for them, or for you, that's not my problem." This time the audience didn't gasp. They simply froze. It felt as though the air itself refused to move. Thick and electrically charged like a storm cloud suspended just overhead. Waiting to burst, Diane sat back slightly, her posture still elegant, her expression still composed, but her eyes told a different story. They had sharpened, brightened. She had weathered difficult interviews before, tempers, trauma, politics, pride. She'd handled outbursts, defensiveness, and the occasional carefully disguised contempt. But this wasn't disguised at all. This wasn't heat. It was cold disdain. And Diane Sawyer had finally reached the point where even her famously controlled patience met its edge. She leaned forward. Only a fraction, but enough to reclaim the center of gravity. Her voice, when she spoke, was firmer still, gentle, but with a steel thread running through it. "Meghan," she began, "you've spoken openly about your time with the royal family. Do you see any possibility of reconciliation? Or is that chapter completely closed?" Meghan's eyes hardened instantly. "Reconciliation?" she echoed. "With an institution built on hypocrisy? With people who never wanted me there?" She shook her head slowly, deliberately. "I didn't close that chapter, Diane, I burned it." Collective shock swept across the audience. Someone near the front whispered, "Wow," loud enough for the microphones to pick it up. Diane blinked once, slow, measured. "You don't think any acknowledgement is owed?" she asked carefully. "For the visibility it gave your work. Your voice?" Meghan scoffed, loud and cutting. "Owed? I owe them nothing. If anything, they owe me." She lifted her chin, unbothered by the silent recoil around her. "Without me," she continued, "they'd still be a tired royal family trying to stay relevant." This time, the gasp was unmistakable, sharp, audible, and unified, as though the entire room had inhaled at once and forgotten how to exhale. Diane's face changed at last. Not dramatically, no raised voice, no sharp movement, but subtly, with a quiet, lethal shift. A crack in her composure so precise and so controlled that it felt like watching a glacier split. And the moment it happened, the air in the studio changed too. It tightened, sharpened, pulled inward. Everyone felt it. Something powerful was coming, a confrontation no one had expected. But everyone instantly understood was inevitable. For a beat, no one moved. No one breathed. Not the audience, sitting stiff and wide-eyed. Not the crew members hovering behind the cameras. Not even the cameras themselves, humming faintly in the corners like machines aware they were about to record something unforgettable. Diane Sawyer leaned forward slowly, deliberately, her hands folded. Her posture precise, her voice low and controlled, but carrying the unmistakable force of someone who had finally had enough. "Meghan," she said, each syllable steady as a blade slicing clean air. "I've given you space to speak. I've listened as you dismissed questions, dismissed this audience, and dismissed everyone except yourself. But let me be very clear, what you're showing today is not strength." She paused, letting silence sharpen the next line. "It's arrogance." The room jolted. A few people gasped. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Too stunned to keep the words to themselves, for the first time since the interview began, Meghan's expression broke. First shock, then irritation, then something colder, darker, a simmering fury that gleamed behind her eyes. "Excuse me?" she said. "Excuse me?" Her voice tightened like a wire pulled too far. "You have no right," but Diane didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't retreat. She simply held eye contact, steady and unyielding. "You talk about privacy while signing public deals?" Diane continued, her tone still calm, still cutting. "You talk about being oppressed while benefiting from a global platform? You claim independence while blaming everyone else for how you're perceived." Every word landed with the precision of a scalpel. The studio felt it, every crew member, every spectator, every silent camera lens recording history. "Not once," Diane said, leaning in a fraction more, "have you shown humility or respect for the people you claim misunderstand you." That was the breaking point. Meghan shot to her feet, her chair screeching across the floor with a sound that sliced through the silence. The noise echoed like metal dragging on stone. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "I won't be spoken to like this." But Diane remained seated, calm, steady, unmoved. Her strength didn't rise. It deepened. "Then perhaps," she said softly, "you shouldn't come on shows expecting praise instead of questions." The audience collectively held its breath. Not a single word. Not a shift. Not a cough. Meghan reached for her microphone with trembling hands. Yanking it off so fiercely the cable snapped free with a loud pop. "This interview is over," she hissed. "And you'll regret this." Her heels struck the studio floor like a countdown, sharp, fast, furious as she stormed off the stage. The cameras tracked her until she vanished into the wings. Swallowed by shadows and outrage, millions would watch that exit again and again before dawn. Diane inhaled once, then addressed the room with a gentleness so controlled it felt like a bomb after a hurricane. "I'd like to apologize," she said. "This is not how conversations are meant to go. We strive for honesty, fairness, and respect. What you witnessed today had none of those." And just like that, the shockwave broke open.